Hey guys, I want to talk a little bit in this video about kind of what I'm going to call muscle memory, like the idea that like you do something enough that you kind of are proficient in it, even at your worst. And this came into play this weekend when I was at New York Comic Con. But first, I want to kind of talk a little bit about some other things. So I had on my list of things because, of course, I'm making a list as people are asking me things to talk about. But one thing that's been on my list for a while, because I get a lot of DMs from people that either on photo shoots or on their way to photo shoots or did a photo shoot and have a question, and it's usually something technical. And a lot of times it's something that I can actually help with a little bit and say, hey, maybe try this or whatever. Sometimes if it's too involved, I mean, it's just not possible. But every once in a while, I'll get a DM from somebody, and what they're saying doesn't add up. And what I mean by that is, they're telling me something, let's say, I'm trying to get the room dark. I'm standing in an office building, and I'm shooting at f/16 at 2/50th of a second at 50 ISO, but it's still too bright in the room. Should I go into high-speed sync to try to get the room even darker? Well, I know, because I was taught Sunny 16, as they called it when I was learning, and I'm sure they still call it that. And do they still do Sunny 16? Write a comment if you know what I'm talking about before I get into the Sunny 16. So Sunny 16 is this basic premise that if you're in the sun and you set your camera at f/16, your shutter speed and ISO are basically the same. So in other words, if I have 100 speed film or ISO 100 on my digital camera, and I set my camera at f/16, my shutter speed should be 1/125, or 1/100, I guess. This should give you a pretty damn close exposure. So doing that math, I can tell you that there's no way in heck that the person was inside and it was dark at the exposure that he was setting. That's what he said was going on. And I thought, this can't be right. Maybe you have your camera on auto ISO, or, and of course nobody wants to think that they screwed something up or it was like camera or, user error, but it's usually what it is. And the thing is I do that stuff too. Sometimes the science isn't wrong, right? If you know Sunny 16 and you know that it shouldn't be that, then you should know there's something going on here, and don't just keep tweaking with your light because it has nothing to do with that. As a matter of fact, when you're setting up your camera to get rid of all the light in the space, you shouldn't even care about your lights. It has nothing to do with your lights. You're just trying to get the camera so the space is dark. So anyways, all that being said, I was thinking about this in the terms of things like Sunny 16 as, this is the kind of stuff that you should just have in your pocket, because it really helps you. Like I can say, when I used to do a lot of street photography with film cameras, I would, if I'm setting in the sun, I would set at f/16. I would shoot 400 speed film, so I'd shoot 500th of a second or 250, depending on if I want to overexpose or underexpose a little bit. For my ISO 400 film, then I would shoot it at f/16. But then if like the cloud came and it got a little darker, I would just open up to 11. Or if I walked into the shade a little bit, I'd go to open to f8. And you start learning. You become like environmentally aware of how much light is there. Now, I get that with a digital camera, you can just take a picture, and all cameras have meters in them now. But there is something that gives you that boost of confidence when you kind of know something versus letting the camera decide for you. So, like, when we were at Comic Con, I had my camera set on bulb because I was doing a bulb exposure. I was walking around the conference room with my camera on bulb at f/16 or f/11 or f/8 or wherever I was, and I was literally just pressing the button, and almost always I was getting a pretty decent exposure because I'm pretty comfortable with it because I've done it long enough. And granted, that might just be like a party trick and doesn't really matter, you might say, but on some level, knowing these combinations of things are going to help you. I was having one conversation with somebody, and they, I was saying, well, I was using the high-speed sync, but I was shooting, at f2 at 8,000th of a second to get the sky dark, and they were like, oh yeah, but the light's not that strong because if you were shooting at f8, you could have done that. But if you had just done the basic math, f2 at 8,000, let's do it. Is 2.8 at 4,000, right? f4 at 2,000, f5, 6 at whatever, and then you keep going down, and eventually you get your exposure. So this kind of locks together and allows you to kind of interpret things without having to even be there or to check things. Anyways, I started thinking about these things like almost like multiplication tables. Like, I don't know if you had to do multiplication tables when you were a kid. I mean, I don't, do they even do those anymore? I mean, let's see some comments about that. Who did multiplication tables, right? But basically, if you don't know what they are, when you were a kid, I think like second grade or something, you learn multiplication, and you have these tables like they're from 1 to 12. So 1 times 1, 1 times 2, 1 times 3, 1 times 4, and you write out the answers to them. And basically, your homework would often be do your multiplication tables 10 times. So you're like, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 4 is, whatever. And basically, you keep going up, and you do these tables, and you just keep repeating them. After a while, there's like a bit of memorization that happens. And yeah, you could just do the math. When somebody asks you 5 times 6, you could be like, okay, blah, 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 whatever. But if you do the tables, you just kind of know, right? You kind of remember it. It's in you. So I think that's how you have to be a little bit with this, with these kind of things like Sunny 16 and knowing kind of roughly, like even knowing like how fast of a shutter do you actually need to stop certain things, right? Because what is a fast shutter speed? If somebody's just standing there in front of you smiling at you, do you need a 250th of a second? If somebody's throwing their hair, is 250 fast enough, right? And these are the things that we start to pick up and learn as photographers, and you'll realize that some things aren't as fast as you think they are, and some things aren't as slow as you think they are. So, again, more kind of repetition. And I guess the thing that I would say is, if you're learning and you pick up your camera and you go into, let's say you take your friend and you take them out and you put them under a tree, right, because that's a good place to take a portrait, and you set your camera and you take a shot and it's dark, so you adjust, you move around, eventually you get it the way you want it. When you're done, think about what it took to get there and try to understand why it happened that way. Did the camera initially underexpose your friend because it was bright behind them and they're backlit? So now you understand that the way meters work, right? If there's a lot of light coming from the back, it tricks your meter. And these kind of things, right? These are the things that will help you later when you need them. And the reason why I started off talking about the muscle memory thing is, so I was under the weather a bit last week, and we had been scheduled for months to do this demo at Comic-Con, myself and Seth, and we had a couple of cosplayers coming, and we were going to make portraits of them. Basically, if you've ever been to Comic-Con, there's a lot of people that kind of set up, photographers. They bring their portable lights out or whatever, and they set up in New York. They have like what they call a tunnel, and they shoot the cosplayers there. And the thing is that they shoot a lot of cosplayers, and they set up their stuff, and it's really nice. At least they take the lights out. They're not just like putting a camera on them, although some people do that too. But there's a certain level of kind of the same that happens because it's like kind of softbox over here or whatever. So we wanted to show some kind of like in-camera special effects so that you could like kind of do some stuff. So I did a double exposure and set did like a dragging shutter, which you can actually see part of. I'll put a link to Seth's video that he did because he was actually testing out a new Westcott light. So I'll see if I can put that link in there. But anyways, mine, I'll have to do a video of it because we didn't record it. But anyways, when I got up that morning and I had to drive into New York City, I mean, my eyes were brrr, and I was like, oh, and I was like, I can't even stand it. My voice was gone. And I hadn't even met the model yet. We had never been to the venue. We were meeting people there who were going to bring equipment, and we weren't sure we were going to have everything we needed. Classic, like, oh my God, setup. A lot of times when you're doing jobs, it's so smooth and everything's really good, and you walk in and there's coffee and there's breakfast and there's fruit and there's catering and blah, blah. And other times it's like this. So we go in there, we got about 300 people or something that are going to be watching us, which is a pretty big crowd. For me, I don't, I mostly present just, crowds around 100 or less. So, we got a lot of people coming in. It's not really our, domain, and I am out of it. I mean, I am so out of it. But we get there, and I set up my lights, do a quick test or whatever before, and I get the model in there, and I'm like, this is how I want to do it, and I do it, and literally, like, the first shot was great. It worked. Like, I did it. It wasn't like I had to mess around with it, and I'm not trying to, like, be like, oh, I know. I hadn't done this technique in a long, long time, but I knew how it worked, and I knew what needed to be done. And even though I wasn't all full of personality and I was like probably like sweaty and crazy looking, I was able to do it. And in fact, when we did the actual, I don't know if anybody was there. If you were, put some comments in the thing. When we did the actual presentation, like everything went wrong. The cameras wouldn't connect to the laptops. Everything was going crazy. But when, again, in the end, we got pictures, and I think that's just the perseverance of doing it. But like if I didn't know that I was right, like if I didn't know that it should work, then when it wasn't working, I would have started doubting myself. And I think that's where knowing the science comes in, right? Like if you're sure that this is how something is and it's not working, then you know that it's not you. There's something else going on, and then you can start to solve your problem. But unless you have a baseline of kind of what you know, it becomes much more difficult to do that. And I understand that, like when you're first starting, you don't know really that much because you've just been starting, right? So you don't have that track record of experience. But what I recommend that you do is, because we all mess up and we all learn in the beginning, keep track of it. I can't remember if this was a video or we were just hanging out talking, but Seth was talking about how he had a little notebook when he was coming up and he would like write down all the things. We don't need to write down your f-stops and stuff anymore because they're caught in the thing, in the EXIF. But if you lit something, if you used a special tool, if you did something different, make a note, get yourself a notebook, make a little note of that day, a little journal. Oh, I went out this day and the light was, the color on the skin was really green, so I threw my reflector on the ground and absorbed the grass and cleaned it up and it was done. Now I learned that technique, right? I learned how to remove the green by blocking the grass because the grass was blocking green, was bouncing green. So this is kind of how we learn and what we do. This one was a little bit scattered, but I wanted to kind of combine this because I think it's kind of important, right? I think that like there's this basic knowledge that if you have will just make you so much more comfortable so that when things go wrong, because they will, you'll be able to just keep moving forward because you know like how something should be. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know what kind of other videos you guys want to see. I mean, this style, I have my little list of things that come to me as I'm driving. But if there's something specific you want to see as far as me talking about it, or if you want to see a special tutorial or something, let me know. I'm really trying to gear up and do more and more stuff for you guys. We'll see where this goes, but when all these people were posting about inexpensive gear, blah blah, and the whole thing's going on, I put my word out there. If you're a cheap manufacturer, you want me to try out some of your gear because you think it's good, send some to me. Well, certain lighting companies did not, but I did get something, so I'm going to try it, and we'll see how it's going to be. So far, it doesn't look very well made, but it's a lens. We'll see. I'll give an unbiased review of it, and we'll see if any other cheap companies want to do that, because the reality is that I'm going to be honest, no matter what you give me. So if you want to give me something, if you have a product and you want to give it to me, I will try it, and I will try it like a pro, and I will tell you. And I'm not going to just be like, oh, it's a piece of shit, don't buy it, unless that is the case. But I mean, everything has its place, so we'll see where this lens works out. It might actually be kind of cool, because I was also shooting with my Diana/Holga the other day, and maybe it'll be like that. Maybe it'll be kind of cool and funky. Who knows, right? But anyways, be sure to follow me if you don't already. Ring the bell or whatever. Leave some comments below. Let me know what you guys want to see, because I'm trying to do more and more of these. It's getting closer to the winter, so I'm going to have to build a little studio inside my house, I guess, to do these, because I can't be sitting outside. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later. I don't know if you can hear that, but there is an animal fighting in my yard, and I think it's the fox.